Okay, so welcome to 11.1 in statistics. Now we're going to be using the Algebra 2 book for this chapter, just an introduction, because we kind of know the purpose of statistics, but before we merge the purpose of statistics and using statistics, we need to be able to find said statistics, said stats. So go ahead and make sure that your vocabulary is done before you start listening to this lecture, because I'm going to be talking and assuming that you know the words. And if the book doesn't give you good enough, and this goes for all the sections, if the book doesn't give you good enough vocabulary definitions, look it up, especially if it assumes things. Like next chapter, you're going to be dealing with box and whisker plots. If you don't know what that is and the book is not explaining, you need to go look it up and find it. So without further ado, let's just go through our designing study here. Screen share. Okie dokie. So here we find a typical statistical study. Okay, in this study, you're going to, in all stat studies, this is kind of the basic foundation of how things are done and decided. The very, very basic. Okay, so first what's going to happen is you're going to identify the objective of the study. Okay, you can't just start randomly surveying people, randomly observing people. You need to have a purpose. Okay, choose a sample and collect data. Now, it's rare that you'll be able to find a population where you can survey or observe the whole population. So what you are going to be doing is you're going to be finding ways where the other person, sorry, just trying to figure this out, where you only can have a small representation of the whole population. So that's what the sample is. Once you figure out that sample, make sure that the samples are a fair representation. Okay, so if we're trying to survey parents at the school, we can't just survey the moms. We have to survey moms and dads. And so once you collect the data, then you can organize it, calculate, do your sample statistics, and then you can make conclusions about the bigger population. Make sure that you pause the videos and do these specific vocabulary words to make sure you understand them. And that way we can proceed to our first problem. A retro movie theater wants to determine what genre of movies to play during the next year. They plan to, I didn't even read the first one. Determine whether each situation describes a survey, an experiment, or an observational study, then identify the sample and suggest the population from which it may have selected. So you should have 3 answers for each of these problems. Make sure you identify what they're asking for you. 3 answers. They're asking you to choose one of these. Then they want you to identify the sample and the population. So, question 1. A retro movie theater wants to determine what genre of movies to play during the next year. They plan to poll 15 random area residents and ask them what their favorite movies are. Okay, so this one is a dead giveaway. When they say poll, ask questions, that is a survey. Okay, and then the sample is random area residents. And it's probably wanting to find out from that town or city so that they know, right? Because theaters can only play a certain amount of movies, and they want to make sure that you're coming to these movies, so they have to be strategic about this, hence the statistics that they're looking for. Next one. A driving school wants to determine the main issue drivers face while taking the driving test. They watch and record 30 random people taking the test. Okay. Oh, by the way, this is 50 random areas. I think the sample size, that's important. A driving school wants to determine, okay, they watch and record 30 random people taking the test. Now, this is neither a survey or experiment because you're not actually interacting with your sample. What you're doing is just simply observing. So this is an observational study. Okay, and determine the main issue drivers face while taking the driver test. They watch and record 30 random people taking the test. So this is for anyone taking driving tests in that city. That's the population. Or town, whatever. And then the 30 random people taking the test, that's your sample size. Now, this is not exactly what the book has said. Let's see. Let's just see what the book has said, because your answers are going to be different. In this case, the book was the book's answer is survey for A, 50 residents that were polled. The population is all potential moviegoers. Well, I said the moviegoers in that town or city, right? But their access is just to that. So it might be different. I don't think that 50 students in that area represent all moviegoers. So I would say town or city. So it's one of these things too. The book is going to have things that you may or may not agree with. And these are the kind of things we need to talk about and discuss. Because in that, if that area is predominantly a certain culture or certain a certain socioeconomic situation, then that would mean that it would be swayed for particular movies for A. This is supposed to be A. So just keep that in mind when we're doing it. So if doesn't match, don't necessarily say, okay, I'm just going to change the answer. I need you to discuss with me and figure out what it is that you think is best. So next one. Determine whether each situation is survey, an experiment, or observational study. Explain your reasoning. A gaming company plans to test whether a new controller, preferably to the old one. A group of teens will be observed while using controllers to see which one they use the most. And B, a restaurant wants to conduct an online study. They will ask customers whether they were satisfied with their dining experience. So I want you to pause the video. I want you to go ahead and answer that. We'll actually try to answer this one in class since we did the other one and it's a very similar question. A little bit more tricky than the first one. So go ahead and pause it and try to and put that answer down on yours and we can check it. The last one is determine whether each survey question is biased or unbiased. That's an important one. If biased, explain your reasoning, because it's one thing to take a survey and it's another thing to give a survey, but if you give a survey with biased questions, yeah, you will have truth in it because the answers will be the person's truth, but you sway it. So, for example, when we survey parents during this crazy COVID time. Should we open the school or not? Our questions need to be very open, very just stick to the facts. Like, here's the facts. Do you think we should open or we should not when they give us the opportunity? But to say, do you think during this crazy time where where your kids don't get to see their friends, that you're going to stop them from going to school and not sign up for this waiver? It's those kinds of things where, well, it won't be that extreme, but sometimes it's subtle and you have to kind of think about it. Wait a minute. So let's look at these questions. So 3A says, what is your favorite type of music? All right. There's no filler words, there's no anything. And B, do you think that poisons such as pesticides should be sprayed on crops? This is supposed to be a B. on crops? Well, to call it poison, such as pesticides, right? People should be able to figure out what pesticides are. It is a poison. Pesticides are a poison, but this is to make a point that they want you to say, don't spray it on crops without the full. The person should be able to decide whether or not pesticides is a positive or negative thing and whether it should be. They need to do the research on their own, or the question needs to give both sides. Some people say this about pesticides, some people say this. Do you think that one outweighs the other and should we spray them on crops? If they only have one side, it doesn't matter if that side is true or not. If they're only moving one side, then this becomes biased. So they either need to give both sides, or they need to just stick to the foundation of the question. What is your favorite music? This is unbiased. And this is important, right? Because sometimes we even try to be, sometimes we try not to be biased, but we have a feeling one way or another, so we got to be careful with our questions. The best thing in these any survey questions is the simpler the better, because then you'll have to keep explaining things. Everyone thinks differently. So go ahead and try that. Try number 2. We'll go over it, page 727, numbers 8 and 9, and see how that goes. This is a pretty straightforward question. You're just rationalizing here. There's not a lot of work involved, but have fun with it, and I'll see you in class.